This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 19 campus and community radio stations, from Newfoundland to British Columbia. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak. From Edmonton, this is episode 206. His name is Markian Kovalyuk, and he has been chronicling events in Edmonton's Ukrainian community for nearly 3 decades. But in all that time, no one has ever seen a single frame of his work. Some have openly wondered if there was ever any tape in his camera. But they are wrong. In early March of 2020, Markian invited me into his modest basement apartment in the city's northwest. There, along the full length of 2 separate walls stacked almost to the ceiling, are tapes he has gathered throughout the years, and they wait in pile upon pile to tell their stories. Today, Markian will tell us his story, and by the end of this episode, we may just find a home and a future for all of those recorded memories.
День, якби лишився один, 2 дюжини годин, прожив би я тобою. Знов в очах не бачу дна, веди мого човна, вогнями над водою. Бачимо кінця, поєднує серця, лише тоненька нитка. Час працює проти нас, працює проти нас, і час минає швидко. Час працює проти нас, працює проти нас, час минає швидко.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Please excuse the mess.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's probably the messiest house you've ever been into.
Can I ask, do you rent this place?
Yes, yes. My name is Markian Kovalyuk, or Markian Koval, as they like to say in English. I've been living in Edmonton for quite a number of years. I was actually born in Germany. My parents were escapees from the communist regime. Well, they came straight to Edmonton in 1954 because my father had a cousin who was from the same village as my father. That was Kute.
And where is that? In western Ukraine?
Western Ukraine, Kosivsky Rayon.
Okay, so it's under the Carpathian Mountains in the foothills.
That's right. So I guess you could call my father a Hutsul. And they were in Germany for a number of years, and then they decided to come here to Canada. Well, my mother worked for the Indian Health Service because my mother had health service training back in the old country, and my father was a teacher in the old country, and when he came here to Canada, he was not very fluent in English, so he couldn't get a job in that particular field. So he was actually working for a garment company that was addressing various parcels around the world.
So he was a shipper.
Yes, I started my youth in the Plast organization.
So that was the Ukrainian scouting movement.
Yes, the Ukrainian scouting movement. And when I was still young, I went to a number of Plast camps. So that's how I learned more of the Ukrainian language, more of the Ukrainian songs.
You spoke Ukrainian at home?
Definitely, because my parents were not fluent in English, so we had to speak Ukrainian in order to understand. Although many of the newcomers forced their children to speak English to them so that they could learn. I still speak Ukrainian, and I still remember words of German from Germany. And
what did you study? How did you pass through school?
I went to St. Joseph's High School. There were quite a large percentage of Ukrainians in that high school. I went to the university and I got my science degree in chemistry, but I never became a chemist. I took education after that, and I taught for a number of years here in the province of Alberta. I was teaching the sciences, chemistry, sciences as they called it then.
So was that your career as a teacher?
Yes.
How many years?
Well, I see, sort of lost track by now. It wasn't that many, but after that, one of the professors in the Department of Slavic Studies mentioned that since I speak so well Ukrainian, I should go into the Ukrainian studies in the Department of Slavic Languages, and I got my master's degree. And then I taught for a number of years at the university level in the Slavic department.
At U of A?
Yes, that's here in Edmonton. Well, I guess I could say I retired about 10 years ago, and I wouldn't call that much of a retirement because sometimes a person has to make his ends meet doing extra jobs in order to survive, because life is not as simple as some people may think. Even with the pension that some people get, life is still difficult.
What do you mean by that? How is it difficult?
Oh, well, like trying to survive. Well, I don't have that many friends now that I would call friends, because many of them have their families and their children. But since I'm all alone here, it might be a bit more difficult for me because I have to be on my own.
Did you ever have a partner?
Well, not a full-time partner, but I tried to get one, but it didn't seem to succeed.
Знаю я, що не хотіла ти жити так, як я живу. І тоді, коли я падаю, сам встаю і знову йду. Я встаю і знову йду. Я залишаю.
You are known for taking videos at events. Now, can you tell me about your interest? How did it start?
Well, it started that I don't know whether you are familiar with Olha Voitsenko. She was writing or collecting information about Літопис українського життя в Канаді, about the Ukrainian life here in Canada. And she published that in quite a number of volumes. And I decided to take a step further. Instead of having it in written form, to have it in a visual form where people could actually see these events. I belonged to a number of organizations like KUK, Ukrainian Canadian Congress, and BUK, Bratstvo Ukrainців Католиків, and they had quite a number of sessions across Canada. In fact, I traveled to Toronto, to Winnipeg, to Regina for some of these congresses, always with a camera. And you could say that I started doing it probably in the 90s, when the cost of the cameras went slightly down, but it was still $600, $700.
Film, video?
Originally, everything was on tape, videotape, but now everything is on digital. I would go to an event, like, for example, like this Sunday, Shevchenko concert at the Demology, or the Ukrainian Youth Unity Center. And I would set up my tripod, and I would video it from the beginning to the end, sometimes 1.5 hours.
In the early days, how did you pay for your videotape? And today, I guess it's all digitally, but still you need to buy discs on which to record all of this?
Well, my parents were alive during that time, and they always helped me out with my difficulties, so that was no problem. I would always turn to my parents and say, "Mother, can you give me another 1,000?
I need to buy videotapes and to travel?
That's right.
And she did.
Well, of course, she had no other. I had no other siblings. I was all alone, and my father died back in the 80s, and then my mother died when she was already 96.
Виростеш ти, сину, вирушиш в дорогу, вирушать з тобою приспані тривоги. За тобою завше будуть мандрувати очі материнські і білява хата.
Edmonton has such a large Ukrainian community and neighborhood community here. Is it possible to be lonely in a city like this?
I mean, lonely during the weekdays, not when I attend some concert. Usually when I attend a concert, people pass by me and say, "Hello, Marciano, how are you?" and things like that.
Is this your place of belonging, your role?
Well, I feel most comfortable in the Ukrainian community because they are the people that know me. If I would go, for example, to another community, they would probably look at me as a stranger.
These boxes behind you, is this where your archives are?
Yes, I have quite a number of still videotapes stored in them. And
On which kinds of format? And going back 30 years, it must have been...
it was VHS, those long cassettes.
Which could still be viewed. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Could you play something back for me that you recorded on...
Okay, I'll try to locate the concert that this week.
You have to dig your keyboard out from under all your memorabilia.
Yes.
So you transfer onto these external hard drives.
Yes.
How many of them do you have? Do you know?
About 6.
Oh, 6. Wow. Wow. And then there are the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Do you have a cataloging system?
Just by dates and times. Never opens when a person wants to.
What kind of camera? Take your time. What kind of camera is that?
That's a Canon.
And this you can hold in the palm of your hand.
Yes. Maybe I should turn up the audio. That was the Shevchenko concert.
The Zapovit, his song, his poem, The Will. What are you going to do with all this material?
Well, there were people from the Ukrainian Folklore Center that mentioned that I should actually leave it in my will, that these things should not disappear, but should be transferred over to them if anything happens to me.
How old are you now?
I'm 70.
Why don't you just hand it over now while you could still see them do something with it? Maybe they could get a student grant over a summer to catalog. And have you thought of that?
Yes, like here's another example of a lecture that was at the University of Alberta. That was on a Ukrainian topic.
And again, what was this lecture? Do you remember about?
About the new facts about Taras Shevchenko.
So what is your plan going forward?
Well, it's to survive as long as I can and to maintain my sanity despite the hardships that might be provided.
Can people help you? Do you need help, or are you fine and independent?
Well, I'm independent as far as living goes. I guess you could say that.
Is it hard letting go?
I'd have to give it some thought. A person hates to think about the end times.
But you don't need to. That's what I'm saying. Maybe you don't need to wait for the end. You can actually see this project before your very eyes. While you're continuing to record, you're watching others put together in some safe place. This is a tremendous dedication that you've undertaken.
Well, I guess you could say that it would be my time machine. If I would want to travel into the past, I would just go into the videos.
Has anybody ever asked you to play back some of the material that you recorded?
No, you're the first one.
In 30 years?
Yes, that's right. I asked a number of people if they would be interested, and they said, well, no, just give me a copy on a memory stick, and we'll look into it.
Maybe the Institute can invite you to play a few and talk about Ukrainian life.
Well, I mentioned that in demology, and they say, well, we have other topics right now that we're discussing.
This is 2020. Can you look into the next 10 years and tell me what can we expect in the Ukrainian community?
There are more and more people coming from Ukraine now, and they are now participating in the Ukrainian community. So the Ukrainian community is being revitalized.
You studied Slavic studies. You were a teacher of sciences in high school. If you were to give a lecture at the very school that you've been recording lectures at, what would it be on? What would you like to tell people about?
Well, probably about the past, how it was here in Canada back in the 60s, 50s, and so on. and how it has changed to the present. I would probably reflect more on what the newcomers may have missed by coming here in the 90s or even in the 2000s.
What are some of those favorite things that you would touch on?
Well, that we were still singing many Ukrainian songs when we gathered together for an event, but now when people gather for an event, I hardly hear any of these traditional Ukrainian songs. They seem to be forgotten. Even at the concerts, they just sing the songs that seem to be most popularized, but many of the songs, I guess, are forgotten. Well, I remember that the first song I sang publicly was by Markian Shashkevich, and there was a concert, and my parents were trying to decide what sort of a song would be fitting for a child. And they said, well, since I'm Markian, and there was a poet in Ukraine by the name of Markian Shashkevich, I should sing something from his repertoire. And that was Цвітка дрібная. Цвітка дрібная молила неньку, весну раненьку. Нене рідная, моли ми долю, дай мені волю, щоб я розцвіла, весну скрасила, щоб я була, як сонце ясна, як сонце ясна, як зоря красна, щоб я зоря без світ до себе. Тебе, як вихор свисне, мороз потисне, вихор свисне, мороз потисне, буря загуде, краса змарніє, краса змарніє. They taught you well. Yeah, I tend to sing that song quite frequently, so I still keep it in my mind. But that was when I was still a small child, I guess 6 years old. And one of the music teachers came up and says, well, that is a song that grown-ups sing, not little children. You sang quite well for a child.
It says, I'm a flower, give me the freedom to blossom so that I can go forward.
That's right. Жаль мені тебе, як вихор свисне, мороз потисне, головоньку схилить, сльозами зронить, жаль серцю буде.
This is the Cool Folklore Center, by the way. Hi, my name is Larissa Tsimbaluk-Chiladin, and I am the community liaison for the Cool Folklore Center at the University of Alberta. We're standing in the middle of our library, and where we've got general books and subjects on Ukrainian culture as well.
It's full of chairs.
Oh, we've got a presentation coming up right away on letters that were hidden by the KGB.
The Cool Center for Ukrainian and Canadian Folklore is situated on the North Campus, one of 4 University of Alberta campuses in the city of Edmonton. It's just one day later. Markian, his digital recorder in hand, is trying to find a seat in what is about to become a standing room only lunchtime lecture.
Where are you going to set up? It's a crowded room.
Yes, I'm just going to hold it in my
You're going
hand.
to be in the front row?
No? Did you interview any of these other people here?
No.
Not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, and Please come in, we have space here. Hello, my name is Elena Pagasyan, and I am the director of the Kyiv Folklore Center. We have threefold mission. First of all, we conduct research on Ukrainian folklore, but we are focusing on Ukrainian Canadian folklore and culture. We also support teaching, and we support some courses which are taught from the University of Alberta. And we support graduate students. And finally, we house Bogdan Medvitsky Ukrainian Canadian Archive.
Larissa, who was Medvitsky?
Bogdan Medvitsky was the professor that started the Ukrainian folklore program here at the University of Alberta. It's over 35 years old now. It has grown from just his one class to being one of the major folklore programs in Canada. The other one is in Newfoundland. And our most recent research project was Love Letters from the Past, which traveled across Canada. It looked at the different ways that Ukrainians communicated in the past, and today's presentation actually comes out of that because many letters were censored when they were sent to Ukraine, and so today's presentation is on those letters that the KGB collected.
So the first stage, letters were sorted in two groups. Those to be detained and those to be sent to the addressee immediately. And they had already...
Letters seem so very private. How do they enter into research?
It's a representation of a practice, letter writing practice. We are collecting private letters for research, and we would be thrilled if people would share copies of their letters.
You're opening yourself up to a lot of mail.
Oh, I hope so. And if we will have a lot of those letters, we can really recreate the part of the life which historians usually can't recreate because we are interested in big events. We are interested in private lives. I came to Canada from Estonia. My grandmother came to Estonia from Russia, so I'm from Russian-speaking family, and I don't know much about my father because he died too early. And my grandmother is from central Russia, from Tver region, from a very little village of Shilkovo. So I started at the Tartu University. I started with the 18th century official culture.
You explain official culture?
Official culture is a culture of the state. It's a way a state is using culture to represent important ideas. So basically it's a kind of propaganda, but in the 18th century it was called state culture.
My great-grandparents came from Ukraine. I'm already third generation here.
Were they among the pioneers that far back?
That's right. I had one family came in 1902 and the other in 1905.
Which part of Ukraine?
Some were Bukovinci and some were from Halachina.
So Western Ukraine.
That's right. I have my Bachelor of Fine Arts from here in the University of Alberta, and as a professional artist for 30 years, I've enjoyed being an artist. I guess people would know me primarily as a watercolorist. I returned 2013, I guess, to do my master's in Ukrainian folklore under Andrina Hachowski, who was director at that time. And I'm now studying Ukrainian Canadian comics, and I'm doing my PhD.
Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay. Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CJTR 91.3 FM in Regina, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, on CJSF 90.1 FM in Vancouver, and on CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo, British Columbia. In the program, we opened with The Ticking of Passing Time, the song Chas by Madheads. Lysic Sam sang Te'ia, you and I. Bila Veja, which means White Tower, with Verostashtis Sinu. It's a song about the inevitability of children growing up and leaving. Taras Shevchenko's Zapovit, performed by the Ukrainian male chorus of Edmonton, the Dnipro and Verkhovena choirs, all of them conducted by Vyacheslav Morozov. Devo Strune, the trio of bandurists, along with Markian, sang Tsvitka Dribnaya. And to close, the Estonian folk melody, Handi Padimelugu, which is a story of a boatman and the band Tuti Tam with a Western Canadian polka medley.
Here at the university, our primary focus is on archives, on papirchike, on the photos, on the diaries, on the letters. Kida's diary, Baba's recipes, photographs that you can't remember who the names are, but what they're wearing tell you about what was being worn in the 1930s, 1940s. However, there are other places that are focused on textiles, like the Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Village. Their focus is on furniture or farm implements from that era of the pioneers. And we're able to network and say, this would probably be better donated over there, this over here. We are a link amongst academics across Canada. We have a project right now called the Such Project. We have an online connection with different institutions, archives, and collections across Canada.
Just search for the KULE Folklore Center, and KULE is KULE on this web page. There is phone numbers, our emails. We do use our archives for research and teaching. Also, we promise to take good care of everything what will end up with us.
One of our large collections we have here are audio and video collections that of families, of events in the community that continue to tell our story as Ukrainians in Canada. Here in Edmonton, we have a man by the name of Markian. It is his passion, and we're looking forward to working with him. And it would be a shame to lose that material.
So you'll talk, or you are talking.
Oh, yes, we are talking.
How do you say thank you in Estonian?
Tänan väga.
Tänan väga.
I'm your reporter Stefan Andrusiak. Partial funding for Nasha Kasha is provided by the Shevchenko Foundation and the Ukrainian Credit Union. Back in a week, God willing. До милої зустрічі. За тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.